Hi, my name is Bill Gray, and I'm joined here by Ripal Gandhi. And we're going to be talking today about radiation scatter protection. I'm the Chief of Cardiovascular Services at Mainline Health, a four-hospital system in Philadelphia. I'm an interventional cardiologist specializing in vascular and structural heart disease. I've had a long history with radiation, actually going back to my father, who was a nuclear physicist, was horrified that I might work in front of radiation for 40 years. And I've had friends and colleagues who have really had difficult issues, both orthopedic and cancer issues related to scatter radiation. So I'm very much invested in seeing an alternative approach to the first generation of radiation protection, which is personal protection. Ripal?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I'm an interventional radiologist. I work here in Miami. I work at Miami Cardiac and Vascular Institute, Baptist Health, and I've been in this field now for 15, 16 years. I don't know where the years have gone by, but they go by quickly.
You don't look like it.
Thank you. But the radiation protection, I think is very, very important to me. I've seen a lot of colleagues develop issues over time, including cataracts. My father-in-law is a nuclear engineer, and there was a statistic that he found, which I found to be extremely alarming, that we are exposed to far more radiation than they have ever been exposed to.
Yeah.
And when we think about radiation protection, and we look at the NFL, for example, we see these guys, helmets, full padded, try to protect these guys, and I don't think we're being adequately protected. And I'm worried about the long-term repercussions of radiation protection.
I just don't feel like the next generation of interventionalists of any stripe should really be doing the same thing we did. I think that's a failed strategy.
100%.
That's why I'm here, at least, anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the radiation being one, as well as some of the musculoskeletal effects of wearing heavy lead in the procedural rooms.
Yeah. We'd like to have a discussion today about the challenges and key considerations for what, ideal scatter radiation design would look like. And why we think radiation dynamic smart shield might be a good candidate for the future of scatter radiation. So Ripal, what today, what do you find most difficult achieving, maximum radiation protection? I mean, you do cases from all access points. You're hugging the II half the time because you're doing an alternative access point. I've named a couple already, but where do you find not only the challenges but the insufficiencies in current radiation protection?
Yeah, it's a great question, Bill. I think none of the things that we're doing right now fully protect us. Now, there are some systems out there. There are some special radiation protection systems like zero gravity. I think STEMRAD has a special system. But some of those systems are very expensive. It's not really practical to have them in most labs unless if you have a lot of money or the means to do that. There are some basic things that we do every day. For example, the rad pads. Fortunately, our technologists don't put them on, uniformly 100% of the time. A lot of labs don't have them. We have this thing called the Terminator, which is great. Helps us with a little bit extra radiation protection. Although it kind of changes your workflow a little bit. You got to kind of reach over it. It's not that practical for some of the more challenging cases where we need alternative access.
Also draping and things like that.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So again, we need something better.
Are you concerned about the need to remove the lead altogether? Or would you be comfortable going to a light lead? What's your threshold for success in scatter radiation protection?
It's a great question. Look, we got to start somewhere. And if I could decrease the amount of lead that I'm wearing, I would be very happy.
In addition to reducing the gross, radiation you're receiving.
100%. Decreasing that. Look, what's a long-term aspiration goal? I think would be zero radiation to any one of us, but I don't think that's going to be practical, at least any time in the near future. I mean, how about you for yourself?
Yeah, I think that's right, and I think the days of going through a procedure or going through a day of procedures and not addressing radiation protection in every shot is gone. It doesn't matter what system you're going to use. You're going to have to make sure that system's in place. You have to make sure it's optimized, and you have to make sure that because now you may be not wearing any lead or wearing light lead. And the reality is that it may take another second or two to put that system into place, but we can't not do it anymore.
What are some of the limitations that you have with radiation protection in your lab?
Yeah, I think one of the big ones for us is the anesthesiologists and the echocardiographers. So in a cardiology lab, we put the echocardiographers at the head of the table, and they're just sitting there right next to the II. And that we have as many shields. We have a kind of a jerry-rigged shield system, but it's really not ideal, and it limits their ability to get into to do their work. And so, for structural heart and for other anesthesia procedures, it's not a small issue.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, immediate access is
Yeah.
critical for any type of protection system that we're going to have.
I mean, we do radial access in 80% of our coronary cases. And so we have to have a system that's flexible enough to go to both ways, and we might want to switch in the middle of a case because of radial spasms or whatever. We need to have the flexibility to switch to a different access point without losing our radiation protection.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We've talked a little bit about the ideal system. I guess the question I would ask kind of in broad terms is, do we think that the ideal system can be 100% effective in all cases? Or are you willing to give up a certain percentage of cases? I mean, the ideal is 100%. But there may be certain cases where you just don't think that there's any radiation protection available to you.
Look, I think I
Well,
got to
other
be
than
practical.
that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I got to be practical. I mean, there's going to be some cases that you're not going to have exactly the radiation protection you want. We do complex things, like you said. Sometimes you're hugging the II.
Right.
Sometimes you got to, I hate putting my hands in the floor, but there are some times where you have to do things which you don't want to do. That being said, I'm looking for a system which, in 95% or ideally 99% plus cases, is going to suit me, protect myself, protect everybody in the room, and be a very viable solution.
Do you think there's a threshold of radiation reduction as compared to a co-control that is, a goal for you? I mean, right now we're seeing radiation protections in the 90s, 90% ranges, and or more. And is that adequate? I know you said you want to get to 100, but would that satisfy you in terms of your ability to use an alternative lead solution?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would.
Yeah.
If we could have more than 90% radiation protection in the majority of our cases, and I'm not a physicist, and I maybe have to sit down with my physicist, but hey, can I now decrease my lead?
Right.
Can I use a thinner lead? If I'm going to be far away, can I, maybe just have a shield in front of me, for our nurses and so forth?
Or if you're hugging the II, is that, I'm getting the same degree of protection as if I'm standing at the side of the table. That's a big deal. There aren't many systems that can do that.
I mean, looking for a system. I mean, that's what we're looking for.
Right.
I want good radiation protection. I want to be able to be very versatile, pretty much do any type of procedure without having any issues. And at the end of the day, if we could have that, and something that's dynamic, it doesn't really change our workflow, something that's easy to set up.
Yeah.
Then that's going to be kind of a perfect solution.
So we're going to go into the radiation system, and I'm going to take a little time here to walk through the kind of difference between this system and the existing other systems. The other systems are really enhanced barrier systems in terms of the shielding that's surrounding the table. They can be heavy, they can be effective, but they have some limitations about getting to the patient in emergencies and having issues around prep and draping and all the other things. And so the radiation system, I think, addresses a lot of those and is a much more flexible system. The reason for that is it blocks the scatter radiation at the source of the radiation. So we're not waiting for the radiation to emanate from the scatter. We're taking care of it at the time it's generated. And that allows for 90% or more protection and an ability to wear light lead. Interestingly, because it's attached to the imaging system, the FDA classifies it as a Class II device. And that may sound like a burden, but in point of fact, for us as kind of consumers of this technology, scatter protection, the other therapies haven't been put to the same standard. So radiation will actually have a set of data at a FDA quality metric that will allow us to really understand what we're getting, not just hearsay, not just anything else, but at a standard the FDA sets. And that's a big deal. As we talked about before, there's no real blocking of the patient. We'll show you a video of the device in a minute, but you can see that it lifts up out of the way in a second or two. And so you can immediately get to the patient during an emergency without any real delay.
I think that's really key.
It's
You know,
huge.
so-
Yeah, it's huge.
Like you mentioned with anesthesia, a lot of the things that we're doing, all of a
Right.
sudden something bad happens, you got to get in there.
Absolutely. And then it does allow for a lot of flexibility and protects everybody in the room. So it's not just the people at the side of the bed, but everybody in the room is protected because the shield comes down, again, at the source of the scatter, not waiting for the scatter to emanate and then trying to catch it. And so it allows you steep angulations, it allows access to different types of procedures, and it has easy setup and rapid turnover. We've installed it in a couple different labs around the country. One of the labs is incredibly busy, you know, crazy busy, and has not seen any slowdown in their productivity.
I think that's so critical. I mean, you know, we've been through a lot of different kind of iterations in our lab with new technologies, and any type of technology that's going to slow you down, that requires a lot of prep, it's hard to integrate. And
Well, it's hard to get physicians to use it.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, they're going to be reluctant anyway, but I think, you know, the easier, it's axiomatic in medicine, procedural medicine, the easier it is, the more we do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so let's look at this video. This is a video now of the radiation device. It's attached to the II and below to the generator. And you can see here that there's multiple different fingers that come down onto the patient and then flaps that complete the, you know, kind of radiation scatter shielding that allows you these steep angles, quick setup in terms of radiation protection. So you can move from angle to angle to angle, which is probably not as relevant for IR as it is for cardiology, because we do a lot of multi-angle procedures. I don't know, I may be overstating that, but we do a lot of multi-angle procedures, and I sometimes have to go to steep LAO, RAO angles to get to where I need to be, even, you know, lateral angles. And this really allows that flexibility, whereas a lot of the other ones, I probably would get blocked. I wouldn't be able to see through some of the shielding that's existing there.
Yeah, a lot of the non-vascular procedures we do, you know, require all kinds of crazy angles.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Biliary interventions, for example. We're start doing endoleak interventions where, you know, you might be in a really strange angle. So, yes, and as we all know, you know, the more you angle the tube, you're increasing the radiation exposure exponentially.
Right.
To have what I just saw and what I witnessed here is that you're protecting the patient even at these very oblique angles, which is extremely, you know, favorable in my opinion.
I think it's incredibly valuable and one of the real assets of this technology. You know, those lowering shields are made of a tungsten material. It's not lead, so it's not really heavy. It allows that kind of mobility, and there are 3 levels of safety for the patient, which talk about proximity and contact sensors, so that the patient doesn't get you know, inundated with the device. And then there's a really nice feature of the device that allows you to pan the table. It's called hover mode, so that it will lift up just a little bit, so it has a little space for you to hover, and you can drop it back down again. So you can fluoro while you're moving if you need to, with a lot of radiation protection. Then you drop it again for the full.
I like that
protection.
versatility. Yeah, but there's going to be times when you want to move things a little bit to get where you want to be, and then initiate the radiation.
We do this all the time. We pan down the leg to make sure that we have the full run of the table, right? And we don't want to lose radiation protection during that maneuver. So it's a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. This is just some examples of the steep angulations. This is you can see lateral craniocaudal. It's quite remarkable, actually, and it's programmable like a lot of the standard imaging systems where you can program your favorites. And so it works pretty well.
I'm shocked that you can go straight 90 degrees and have the system still work. Because I could tell you, I mean, we're getting a lot of radiation there, number one. And some of these cases, you know, for example, we're treating, you know, fenestrated endografts, you know, doing, or, you know, maybe SMA, you know, recanalization where you're, you know, working in a pretty lateral or sometimes even 90 degree angle. It's nice to have a system which is going to protect you at all these angles.
Yeah, I agree. You know, for structural heart cases, we not infrequently have to go to some fairly steep angles for TAVR because of a horizontal heart or rotated, and the same thing with mitral and tricuspid, especially tricuspid interventions. So to your point, it really helps to be able to be flexible like that, to be able to move and still have the radiation, because as you go to more steep angles, you get more radiation production. It's good to have the radiation protection stay in place. And my brother here, Kenny, has a quote here, and I don't think he's wrong. From a practical, moral, and risk mitigation perspective, every institution performing fluoroscopic procedures with X-ray equipment should equip labs with enhanced scatter protection. And it really, he's spot on. The problem is that we haven't elevated this conversation yet.
100%.
And the hope is that this you and I talking here will help start that up a little bit. Our hospital administrators, our radiation safety physicians, they're not physicists. They're not talking about this. Hospitals are in a financial pickle these days, and they don't want to talk about extra expenses. But we have young guys who are demanding this. As more and more hospitals are employing physicians, I think it's going to be almost a consideration of employment.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, to me, it's extremely important, and I'm really kind of preaching that to our trainees who are coming out. We train residents
Right.
and fellows. Like, yeah, you might not feel it now, but there are long-term deterministic effects of radiation that we all know exist. There are a lot of colleagues who've developed developed cataracts, and of course we worry about cancer as well. And yeah, just because you can't see it or you can't see the radiation, it is dangerous.
Absolutely.
And I think as we're learning more about these things, it's going to be incumbent on us to go to our hospital administration and say, hey, listen, we have all these measures to protect patients, but we need something to protect ourselves as well.
And it's not just the physicians, it's the techs and the nurses and everybody else who circulates in the room, anesthesiologists, echocardiographers, things like that. It's a real ripple.
Yeah.
And if we don't solve it, I think we're really, again, doing injustice to the next generation of interventional
Couldn't agree with you
labs, if you will. The Radiaction Company now has some installations.
more. No, how do I get one of these? Because I would love to have the system in our lab.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's happening now is that it's a second generation dynamic robotic shield. It attaches to the imaging device, so whatever X-ray machine you have, Toshiba, Siemens, whatever. And we are, at this point, installing them in select reference centers with the collaboration of the manufacturer of
So you have to work with
Correct.
with the large imaging companies to be able to install it on their systems.
So while we don't have a very large distribution today, and we're still gathering lots of good data, and that's what these reference centers really help us do, across the spectrum of peripheral IR, EP, coronary intervention. It helps us work from what people see as a BlackBerry today to an iPhone, much more advanced technology, which might incorporate AI and other things like voice commands and so on. The key here to get the more broad acceptance and distribution of this kind of technology is the cooperation of the big iron, which is the manufacturers of the X-ray machines, because they have to allow us to install that. And there have been several that have been very cooperative and collaborative because they understand that they're creating a toxic environment. They need to help solve the problem. And they're also seeing the demand from us as physicians that we're not going to sit around and just get lead-lined radiation the rest of our lives.
I love this concept.
Yeah.
I love the dynamic nature of it. I haven't seen any other system out there that truly moves with you, moves in different angles, moves when you're moving the table. And like this is our future.
I think so. Well, listen, thanks so much for being here and sharing some insights. We really think this is a terrific idea. We look forward to having more distribution and experience to reflect on, and data to demonstrate its effectiveness and the next generations of this technology.
I look forward to utilizing one of these very soon, I hope. Yeah.
Terrific. Thanks again very much, Ripal, for being here and sharing your insights. And we thank the audience for taking the time to learn about scatter radiation and the radiation device.